right now we're in the shock and awe phase of the Trump regime. I don't like to
Mm,
call it an administration because this is a fascist regime. And, I have a little less patience. I've never been the most patient person, but now that I have less patience because we are being run by a fascist government. And it's like, so I'll post things about, we need to fight because at the beginning of a fascist regime is the time to topple
yeah.
it.
Hello, and welcome to Eric McElroy's American Exchange with me, Eric McElroy. That's how it works every time. It seems to surprise me that my name is in the title. Welcome to the podcast if you've not been before, or welcome back if you have been. This is where I dial across the pond to find out what is happening in my home country. And this week, we are pleased to welcome back to the podcast Kimberly Johnson. She's a podcaster, a political podcaster with a Start Me Up podcast, and also a new podcast called The Seeker, which is not about politics at all. And we talk about both in the pod, so make sure to listen to that. And I've got links to it, of course, in the description of the podcast as well if you want to check out her for more. She's absolutely brilliant. She's a Democratic activist, so she's right there on the front line of looking at what the Democrats are doing in this particular moment. And the moment is scary, basically, is her assessment. And I can't really argue with that. We chatted before the continuing resolution was passed by Schumer and other Democrats going along with the Republicans to keep the Trump government going. So we didn't really dive into that. But we did talk about the power of boycotts. We also talked about how fascism is here, basically, in her view. And I can't really agree or disagree with that. I can agree that we are in a very bad moment. So, absolutely enjoyable to talk to you. As always, please enjoy Kimberly Johnson. Oh, and if you're tuning in on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with your friends. We're really trying to grow the YouTube community, and I put comedy clips up there as well if you need something that is not politically based every now and then. But in the meantime, please enjoy Kimberly Johnson. So good to see you again. Welcome back to the podcast, Kimberly. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And it's also very good to see you again.
Yes, it is good. We need to see our friends during this
Yeah,
fantastical time that we're in.
yes.
And
That's
even
what,
though we've
yeah.
never met in person, we have been talking for about 3 or 4 years now. So we go back. We
Yes,
go
we do.
back. Well, my whole idea with this podcast, because I'm stuck over here in London where nothing ever happens of consequence like it does in America, to get a
Lucky.
sense of what's going on. And so, how do you think things are going on at the moment?
Well, they're not very good.
Yeah.
I think that, right now we're in the shock and awe phase of the Trump regime. I don't like to
Mm,
call it an administration because this is a fascist regime. And, I have a little less patience. I've never been the most patient person, but now that I have less patience because we are being run by a fascist government. And it's like, so I'll post things about, we need to fight because at the beginning of a fascist regime is the time to topple
yeah.
it, once it cements. And so I'll say something like that and they'll go, well, we're already fascist now. And it's like, yes, we have a fascist government, but democracy isn't completely dead yet. It might die completely. It's
Mm,
literally hanging on by one tiny little thread. And the little tiny thread are the people in the courts. Not that
yeah.
I think the courts are necessarily going to save us from everything, because if it's up to them to choose whether they want to, or like who's going to enforce anything.
Hmm.
Cash Patel? I doubt it. So I don't know exactly what's going to play out. But I think that, we're in a very scary spot. I'm not even sure what's going to happen one day to the next. And I should, just tell everybody the truth here that since the election, I absolutely pay attention to what's going on, but I am
Mm.
not as deep in the weeds as I used to be because it's too maddening. And there's, I want to have decent blood pressure. Just I want to maintain my sanity. So
Yeah.
I do have an overview of what's going on, but then when you get real deep into it, I don't know. And I don't even really want to know because what I know is what they're doing is criminal, horrible, cruel, and all the bad things.
Yeah, I think that the concept of them throughout the election denying the outline that they had, which was Project 2025,
Hmm.
and the jujitsu craft that they played and that the mainstream media played right into them in denying that that was the agenda, when that is clearly the fucking agenda. There's
Hmm.
no question. I mean, the guy
No.
who wrote it or was in charge of it is now back in the same job he was in the White House. And he even was caught on camera saying that the plan was for, he didn't care if Trump disavowed it because it didn't matter because once Trump won, they were going to do it anyway.
And I
And
think Trump was in there like 300 sometimes in
yeah,
Project 25. Yeah.
and this, I don't know where the saying comes from, but you're the company that you keep.
Hmm.
And the company that Trump has kept, whether he believes in any of it, I think is doubtful. He doesn't give a fuck about far right Christians. He doesn't give a fuck about,
No.
I mean, he likes cutting the Department of Education because he likes low information voters, which
Yeah, he
is,
said.
yeah, he says it, which is incredible because how you then, because I mean, I don't know about you. I have family that voted for Trump and that, that give well, how can you say this about this? You say some extreme things. We're not all racist. And I'm like, yeah, the guy who you support compliments you on your ignorance.
Yeah. Yeah, but it is a cult, and I think that you get deep into that cult and people just are going to double down. Like I have a family member, I don't know that anything would sway this person. And then on top of it, you have to realize a lot of these people, if they were presented with a fact that runs
Mm,
counter to what they're believing in, they're still going to choose fascism
yeah.
because their friends and family do. And so we're all about, clans and groups. And when you're in a clan and a group of people who, and I should say clan, but you know what I mean? When
Yeah.
you're in a group of people, you don't want to say or do anything that's going to mess up that relationship. And so you'd rather just stay with your friends and the people that have your back. And then in this particular day and age, what's really sad about everything is we have no one, news, whether it's a news program or whatever, no one main place where we can all go and
Mm,
agree that these are the facts. Everything's been splintered, and
yeah.
we've got Newsmax, which is worse than Fox News. Fox News, the owner, Rupert Murdoch, doesn't even like Donald Trump. So occasionally on Fox
Mm,
News, you see some, not anti Trump, but not favorable to Trump.
yeah.
But, on Newsmax, they just go wild, and it's basically like Nazi Central, and they just can say whatever they want,
Mm,
and then that's where people like my family members are going to get their news because they're
yeah.
hearing what they want to hear, and unfortunately that's just where we are right now. And the right wing machine, the disinformation machine, I believe, is why we're here. There's lots of other reasons,
Mm,
but the big main reason is because we have this massive in America, right wing, whether it's podcasts, cable news, and then even MSNBC, CNN, the CEOs are, okay with fascism. The MSNBC got rid of their people of color in Black History Month.
yeah.
So I haven't watched since the election, and I'm not going to ever watch them again. I
Yeah.
can't do it. I don't care how much I love Lawrence O'Donnell, and I love Lawrence O'Donnell.
There's other ways to, and I'm sure he'll probably leave anyway because everyone seems to be going into their silos. Which you're right. I mean, well, there's two places people can get truth, and that's on Start Me Up and American Exchange podcast.
Exactly.
That goes without saying. But
Yes.
beyond that, the massive reach that we have, or that I have. But yeah, I think it is astounding, and you could see how corporate media was ready to run. Well, A, the way that the billionaires lined up behind Trump, and
Hmm.
B, the way that they just jettisoned their DEI so quickly,
Hmm.
so quickly. You could tell they never fucking wanted to do it in the first place.
No.
They didn't fight for any of that. They went, oh, good, we don't have to bother with this anymore, and they
Right.
ran from it as fast as they could.
Yeah,
Which,
it's really sad. I mean, we've got everybody. It just seems like everybody's falling. The news media has basically now it's owned by what, six people or something, and it's I don't want to hate on billionaires because obviously not all billionaires are terrible. Um, but unfortunately, the billionaire status, I don't think the billionaire status should exist. I
mm,
think that once you hit a certain amount, you need to pay. I mean, like, how much money does one person need? But there's that whole capitalistic thing that you should be able to make as much as you want.
yeah. I mean, to be
But
fair to Elon Musk, he's got 14 or 15 or 20 kids now. So
I know, right?
he needs the money to pay the child support.
Those billions and billions and billions of dollars. Yeah, but unfortunately, those billions of dollars can buy elections. And
Yeah.
so, we've got um, the way that our system is set up, we money talks, and that's just unfortunately the game. So unless and until that changes, I think we're gonna be experiencing some deep shit for a long time.
Now, just to be the counter narrative, because obviously, if anyone who didn't agree with us got this far into the podcast, which is probably unlikely, they would have been triggered by now, and that snowflakes that they are on the right run for the hills screaming. How do you feel about the engagement with, because we're on platforms where we talk to people and want to have ideas, and I like the idea of sharing ideas. And for the first time ever, 2 or 3 podcasts ago, I actually had a Republican on who I happened to go to high school with.
Oh,
And we hadn't spoken in 35 years, just tells you how old I am. And he went on, I've become a comedian. He went on and became a brigadier general in the Air Force.
wow.
So pretty parallel life tracks. And he's a conservative. And
Mhm.
he doesn't stand as a mega conservative, but he's still moving in right wing circles. And he was the first person I've had on. We didn't go into the past, so we didn't go over what he thinks of the election or Jan 6. We tried to look forward, and you know, but I've been hesitant to engage because I've been offered people like Seb Gorka. What's the fucking point of talking to Seb
Yeah.
Gorka? But somebody who is on the left. So I don't know if you've done that outreach, but also I saw in your feed this week, Gavin Newsom, governor of California, aspiring presidential candidate. He's just had on Charlie Kirk, who is a proper fascist right wing nut job, I would say, alleged, just because I'm in the UK, they can sue here, and then
Mhm.
Steve Bannon, who I think I can say without any fear of being sued is a white supremacist.
Mhm.
So, at least in my view. I mean, that he's gone way out there, not just talking about people who are former Trump administration. These are people that are at the forefront of this movement.
Mhm.
Is that where that seems like
No,
a little bit jumping the shark?
it is jumping the shark, and that's what I said. And I mean, he also came out last week, and I think it was when he was talking to Charlie Kirk, and he was talking about how trans people shouldn't be playing sports. Trans women shouldn't be playing sports, and he just basically told everybody out there, I'm just going to give in to the right wing lies,
Hmm.
and I'm going to go against human rights for popularity or whatever. I always, my Gavin Newsom situation is when I was first introduced to him on the Bill Maher show, which I no longer watch, and I have not watched it for a long time. I do not like Bill Maher, but I used to like to watch his show. And just FYI for anybody out there, I didn't always agree with him, even when I liked him, because people will criticize me and say, "Oh, just because he says what you don't like." No, I almost never liked Bill Maher. I always thought he was a smug, arrogant asshole.
Yeah.
But I liked his show, and sometimes I agreed with what he said, and sometimes I didn't. And then I
Hmm.
saw him kind of moving to the right. But anyway, so I was introduced to Gavin, and I was so impressed with him because he was just like a human encyclopedia. It didn't
Hmm.
matter what the subject was. Gavin knew he could just start talking about it like he'd been studying it for the past 3 months. It was
Hmm.
insane how intelligent and just right at the ready. Everything was at the ready. So I was always impressed by him.
Hmm.
And then time goes on, and I don't
Yeah.
remember when I found this article, but there was an article talking about how Gavin was an opportunist and how he wasn't
Hmm.
necessarily somebody that was our friend on the Democratic side. So I remember reading that and kind of thinking about it, and I thought, I mean, I can see the point that that person is making, but when we have a system that is set up to make it harder for Democrats to win, we need these powerhouse Democrats.
Hmm.
And so he was a powerhouse. And so I was
Yeah.
willing to kind of overlook the idea that maybe he was this opportunist. But now that this has come up, to see him trying to make friends with fascists and people who are okay with cruelty and corruption and all of that, it's like, no, that's it, you've lost me forever, that's it.
Hmm.
I think he made a huge mistake. I think unfortunately what that's going to mean is he's going to divide Democrats. He's going to have the camp that think, oh well, he's going to be viewed as a moderate, and
Right.
so he'll there's going to be that part of the party that just we just want to win, we just want to win, and they're going to fight with the progressive side that says no, we can't cave to these. It's not conservative values, it's
Hmm.
MAGA values. I don't mind conservative values when they're true values.
Mm.
but not this guise of conservative values that's really a weaponization of religion and, really code like the trickle down economics bullshit. I mean, that's not serving the people.
Yes.
So, I don't even know what would be conservative. And I think ultimately it would be, let's not go too crazy with spending,
Mm.
like on certain things. Sometimes Democrats can get a little bit too far out with their spending. And so it's like, it's good to have a party that would rein them in and, work things through and keep everybody even. But we've got, it's like one extreme. And then we've got the Democratic Party right now, and they need to find their way. They're not doing so great, I don't think.
Well, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, so we have a new leader of the DNC. I'm not overly familiar with him yet. He's coming out of
Why?
Michigan, right? Yes, I think
Not sure. I don't remember.
one of those Midwestern states. It's all the
Right.
same in the middle. I know that's going to get me in trouble. They're very different. I'm
Yeah.
sure Wisconsin and Michigan are vastly different places. I have no idea. But I think he's meant to be a good egg from everything I've gleaned. What little I have so far. Um, I mean, is it completely rudderless from what you're watching with the Democratic Party right now?
No, I just think that right now, I think that everything is up in the air. Like I said
Hmm.
earlier, we're in a shock and awe phase. I
Yeah.
think there's the old school Democrats like the Chuck Schumers who really are not handling this well because they're basically like the peacetime kind of elected officials, and we're not in
Hmm.
peacetime, and we're not in wartime. We're not in fighting bloody wartime, but we are in war because the Trump and Elon and everybody they're going through, and they're like, who knows what they're doing to the
Yeah.
IRS? We don't even know what they're doing in Doge. And so to cozy up with these people, or to even vote, like I saw AOC was putting out a call for all the voters to call your senators because it looks like some of them might be caving on the government shutdown. And
Yeah.
I think they need to be more unified as a party. Now, I want to be clear that while I'm being critical, I am a Democrat through and through,
Hmm.
and part of democracy is speaking up. And, whether it's the side that you agree with or not, I agree with the Democratic Party's values. But
Hmm.
sometimes, well, we all know their messaging needs work. We saw Kamala Harris did fantastic messaging, but that
Yeah.
was her campaign. That wasn't the party as a whole. Her messaging was on point. It was fun. It was funny. She had young people understanding social media, doing what I think Democrats as a whole need to be doing. And at the
Hmm.
time, while she was running as a candidate, we didn't see that. We saw some really great messaging from the party,
Yeah.
always, I think, consistent great messaging from her campaign. But now that she's gone, we're back to, let's call them our friends across the aisle. And it's like, no, not when women are dying in parking lots because of the fact that abortions are now illegal, or, people are getting detained, and, it's only just beginning, and there's all this stuff going on. So, I mean, I think right now, I don't know where it's going to go. And I do have hope that
Hmm.
Democrats will find their way. And like right now, I'm getting, it's really bothering me that there's, Bernie is out there, Bernie Sanders is out there, and he's talking to people. Now, I
Hmm.
just want to be clear. I initially supported Bernie in
Hmm.
2015 to 2016. And then when he dropped out, I supported full force behind
Hmm.
Hillary. I
Yeah.
had never hated Hillary. I just preferred Bernie's vision. And then I do think he took too long to drop out. I do think
Hmm.
that he understood he was being used as a Russian asset at that time, and he didn't do anything about it. And it really pissed me off.
Yeah.
After the election, there were things that I liked that he did. And I'm talking about 2016. And
Hmm.
then there were other things that he didn't. I think that, when you look at his entirety of his career, um, more talk, but he does show up, and what he's very good at. So I've gone, basically this is all to say that I have loved him. I have been extremely angry at him, and I've voiced both on my
Yeah.
social media. So now I see he is going out and he's getting big, big crowds. And, he's oligarchy. He's been on the oligarchy thing forever. And he's right. He's always been right about the oligarchy. And
Yes.
so he's able to he's a populist. He knows how to talk to masses and he also knows how to reach MAGA. And so
Mm,
in this moment, he's rising to the occasion. And I like what he's doing. And of course, there's a division because there's the people who are never going to forgive him and to me, it's not even about forgiving.
yeah.
We take it day by day. This is politics. It's not our spouse. It's not our family member. I don't have to like Bernie or love Bernie or hate Bernie. I'm going to support whoever is fighting the hardest against fascism. And I
Yeah.
see him doing that. And when you get crowds of people in middle America showing up and listening, that's a way to fight. And right now, we're not seeing that from Chuck Schumer. And I hate to say this, but we're not seeing it from Hakeem Jeffries. And Hakeem, it's not that I hate him. It's not that I think he's the worst person in the world. I just think that he's not rising to this moment. I
Yeah.
don't want to get down in the mud with them. I don't want to become them, but we need people like AOC. We need people like Bernie. And then there's JB Pritzker, who's the governor of Illinois. And I just want to
Mm,
say about him because he is a billionaire.
okay.
I think that he might be a contender for presidential candidate. If that comes to pass, I think the way that he would be, except he's a fighter and I
Mm,
think he's good. Like everything that I've seen so far, he's impressive. But I think that he needs to come out immediately and say, we need to tax the billionaires. I'm a
yeah.
billionaire and I am willing to, deal with whatever tax, all that, he needs to upfront because if he does that immediately, it's going to crush all of the so-called progressives because I consider
Mm,
myself progressive, but not to the detriment of the party, the only party that's going to work for the people.
yeah.
So do I think there's corruption in the Democratic Party? Of course there is. Of course there is politics, but it's not to the level that we see on the other side. And
Mm,
so the goal here is not to get, where we're both on the same level with corruption. The goal is to, you've got your opposition party. And I think people like JB Pritzker, AOC, Chris Murphy, even Chris Van Holland, Eric Swalwell, Jasmine Crockett, these people they're providing the opposition. And I
mhm,
think those are our true leaders. And I think that the more they get attention and the more they get a favorable response, other Democrats, not all, because I think some of them are going to just be stuck in the old way, but
mm,
Democrats are going to start realizing, oh, wait a minute, that person is getting attention for what they're saying. I maybe need to take their lead, follow their lead. That's
yes.
that's my hope. That I'm trying to base some human psychology. How do people
Mm,
usually react? And so we'll see. I hope that people take their cues, but don't follow Gavin Newsom because he's like I said, yeah, he jumped the shark and fuck him. You
yeah, that's a technical term in politics.
know?
Fuck him. Fuck him. Yeah, I don't see Bernie Sanders sitting down with Steve Bannon anytime soon.
No.
He would kill him. Not kill him literally, but
Yeah.
yeah, metaphorically.
That
Um,
would be an interesting conversation though.
yeah, I can't.
I
That would
know.
be,
I don't know if I can handle it, but to
yeah,
watch Bernie because Bernie just has no fucks. Bernie will just
yeah.
say,
Well, no, absolutely not. He hasn't for a long time.
yeah.
I think you're right. I think that tension is there because I come from probably more of the middle road Democratic leanings. We should talk, be balanced and find a middle way. And I always thought Bernie was way too far left and way too far revolutionary for America. He did kind of get to the point where I used to try and explain it to people in the UK, like Bernie made it acceptable to say you believed in socialism,
Hmm.
because with the America that I grew up in, if you had people over for dinner and they said they were socialists, it'd be like, Margaret, get your coat, we're leaving. It would be that
Yeah.
level of, and he brought that into the dialogue and it inspired a lot of young people, all of those things. I think that and so I have some centrist instincts as well, you know, and I can see where people are like, we have to be the party that does still honor the rule of law and honor the
Mhm.
traditions, because otherwise you throw them all away. But at the same time, that's not the moment. And the moment that wins, and look at what's working, is a extremist movement on the other side that does not already give a fuck and doesn't care about norms and blows through every norm and control. What I would like to see is Democrats embrace that, stay on the side of the law because
Yeah,
that does matter, stay on the side of truth because that matters, and still push the envelope. You know,
yeah.
still use all the levers of power. Don't capitulate when it's easy. Make
Hmm.
the Republicans sweat in their own pile of
Yes.
shit that they
Hmm.
have made
Yeah.
and rise up, because we still have some time before the midterms get serious. You
Right.
know, let them just sit and, we'll keep, at the time that we're recording this, the stock market is still crumbling because, it's the hokey pokey of tariffs. You put your tariffs on, you take your tariffs off.
Right.
But which goes against some of my natural instincts. I'm not a natural burn. Like he was I'm like, no, yeah, I like what he's saying, but it's just the middle America's not going to go for it. But like you're saying, middle America is going for it.
Well, he went to West Virginia. I think this was back when Trump was president. He went to West Virginia and he talked to Trump voters and convinced them
Yeah.
to get on board with Medicare for all. So, I mean, it's just the way that it's presented. Now,
Yeah.
Bernie hasn't really accomplished very much as far as legislation and, he hasn't done that. Do I think that if he became the president, he would have absolutely gotten Medicare for all? Probably not, at least
Yeah.
not immediately. I think that you can't take what we've got in this huge massive country with all these millions of people, break it all down and then start with Medicare for all. It's got to be a
Mm.
transition, and that's what the Affordable Care Act was there for. And like I hate relitigating this, but back in 2016, Hillary's stance was literally the opposite of Bernie, which is fascinating because she wanted Medicare for all initially back when
Yeah.
Clinton was president, and she got shut down. So I think that she allowed her centrist side, or her I'm afraid to go there side, come out, when instead of saying no, no Medicare for all, and I don't think America is ready for it, just to say we use the Affordable Care Act to transition slowly. And
Yeah.
that's the most practical way to look at it. I think if she would have said that, I think, she still would have gotten blowback from the Bernie bro crowds, because I was
Mm.
never a bro type. But I mean, I'm sure I just want it now, because there's always going to be the purists who think everything has to happen right now. And it's like, not
Yeah.
when you live in a country that's massive like this with so many different opinions. You have to slowly
Mm.
look at Obamacare. It took a while for it to, it had some glitches initially. They fixed those glitches, and it was not perfect, but it wasn't created to be perfect. It was created to be evolved. And
Yeah.
so you keep adding on top of it, and eventually you can get to there could have been a single payer option. Put that option out there,
Mm.
let everybody pay their insurance and do all that stuff, but then put the option out there. And then
Yeah.
what happens is people are like, I'm taking the option. And then they tell their friends. And then before you know it, it's happening. But it's not going to happen when you hear Democratic leaders who are afraid of, I mean, I don't think we should come out and push everything all at once. But if we can
Mm.
incrementally get the ball rolling, sometimes it will snowball and it will happen quickly. Sometimes it will happen slowly. I don't know what Bernie could have done, but I think that his ideas, I mean, were so, I mean, to me, I see Elizabeth Warren as the doer of those ideas, because she and
Mm.
Bernie are so very similar, but she
Yeah.
has a track record of doing.
Yeah.
She started what was it, the Consumer Protection Bureau, which the
Yeah.
Senate didn't even let her lead because she's a woman. She created it, and now they're getting rid of it. But,
Yeah.
I mean, she's somebody who put the money, but going back to her, I feel like, well, she's a woman, and right now Americans are just, I mean, there's that whole
Mm.
question. I know I'm just babbling on, but it's like there's this whole question: is America ready for a woman? Of course, America is ready for a woman, but our electoral college makes it hard for Democrats to win. First of all, it
Mm.
makes it doubly hard for a woman to win, and then it's even harder for a woman of color to win.
Yeah.
So I think that as long as this, we've got the what is the amendment that put money in politics, and I can't remember the name of it.
The court case, you mean?
Just
Citizens United?
thank
Or
you, Citizens United. So as
yeah,
long as we have Citizens United and then we have the Electoral College, I think that I hate saying this because I am a feminist through and through. And I think Kamala Harris would have been one of the most kick ass presidents we've ever had in our whole, like the whole history of the country.
yeah,
We'll never know. I mean, hopefully, maybe one day we'll get to know. I think
yeah.
she would have been amazing. But I think right now, because of the way our system is, I think, talk about being safe. Let's go with the white male. Let's get a white male in there who
Mm,
is going to make sure that it's easier moving, down the line that we
yeah,
can, a black woman can run and win
yeah.
because it's not rigged against her. So I'm not saying that a black woman or a white woman or any woman couldn't win because they're women. It's because this country is very misogynistic. It's very patriarchal. So you've got that in there. And then, I mean, Hillary did get 3 million more votes than Trump, but we
Yeah.
saw how the Electoral College was rigged against her. It was the Electoral College with the Russian disinformation, with the decades of baggage that the Republicans hung on her.
Yeah.
So I think she would have been a really good president, but unfortunately, we didn't get to know that. So, I mean, I think there's something to be said for, yeah, we've got to play certain things safe. But I think we also have to recognize in order to have progress, we've got to take the risks, but the risks should be incremental, not
Mm.
huge, fast, crazy, let's just revamp the system today, because that's not going to happen.
Well, and it's interesting though that the two of the people that I know you've mentioned, JD Pritzker. I don't know, not JD Vance, different JD, completely
B,
different JD. JB,
JB.
JB.
Yeah.
Okay, JB. Yeah, I was thinking JD for a second. Like, no more JDs. I
No,
knew it was
JB.
JB, but I'm like, not JD, not JD. Um, but but you've mentioned two people that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. I mean, they can't be I mean, if they're the people that are stepping forward in this moment, I mean, bless them, they can't be the future of the party because, I mean, Elizabeth isn't that far in age behind Bernie and Trump, and Biden. We need the new wave to come forward and be energetic and
Yeah,
be communicating. You
yeah,
know,
we've got Jasmine Crockett, we've got AOC, and we've got Chris Murphy, and I do see younger people. JB is
mm,
not young, but he's not, in his 70s. So yeah, I mean, we do have some younger people and younger ideas because I think it really doesn't matter um, as far as your age, it's your ideas. But yes,
yeah,
once you hit a certain age, you're only going to live for us. It's not like you're going to be around for another 35 or 40 years.
yeah,
So I think there are, David Hogg he's part of the DNC. We've got some young people in there, and I think that it'll be interesting to see what happens because like right now as we're talking and we'll find out, I don't know when the numbers are going to come out, but we're on an Amazon boycott week, right?
mm,
So we did see from that first economic blackout, which I believe was on March 1st. I think it was March 1st, but either
yeah,
way, that first economic blackout did show that I believe Forbes talked about both Target and Walmart were down 9% in their online purchases. So I
wow,
don't know what the real, like just going into the store numbers were, but there
mm,
was a decline. And in fact, there was actually more of a decline. I think it was in Target on the app shopping. So I think it was like a 14% decline on that day. What I was thinking about that boycott was we don't need big numbers. We just need to see
mm,
some kind of movement so that people go, oh, okay, there was a difference that was made. We made an impact. And the nice thing about boycotts, specifically, boycotting, whether it's Amazon or Nestle or whatever, just an economic blackout day. Number one, you are not at risk of getting arrested or shot as you
mm,
might be in a protest because right
yeah,
now, and I'm not telling people that they shouldn't protest, but this is a legitimate concern. It's a legitimate fear people have of going out and I don't remember the man's name, but he was detained for protesting.
yeah,
And so there's that. And there's also the idea that you can do it comfortably. You know, if you're an Amazon shopper, not
mm,
shopping on Amazon for a week isn't going to ruin your life.
yeah,
It's not going to, it might inconvenience you a little bit, if you're
Mm.
used to ordering on it weekly. But all you have to do is make sure to get what you need in advance. And
Yeah.
for the people who say, well, that doesn't mean anything because if you're going to buy it anyway, this is not so much about the economic impact. It's the message. It's the
Mm.
message that we have the power. If we want to stop shopping, we can stop shopping.
Yeah.
And so, make sure you've got your, products beforehand, and whether you get them from Amazon or not, it doesn't really matter. What matters is if you have a period of time where everything slows down, because of course people are still going to buy from Amazon at this
Yeah.
during the week. Some are doing it for a week, some are doing it for 40 days. Some people aren't even shopping there anymore. But regardless, even if it's just for a week, and Jeff Bezos sees, oh, wait a minute, they're not getting the Washington Post, and now for this week there's been a certain decline. These boycotts are going to keep going because the
Mm.
more they go and the more successful they are, the more they go and the more successful they are.
Yeah.
And people right now, there's this huge swath of people in this country who are still completely in the dark about what's happening. They're
Yeah.
just, maybe they know Donald Trump is president, but they don't even know about Doge. So one day, what's going to happen, whether it's the cost of food with tariffs, whether it's having to do with Social Security, whether it's Medicaid, whatever it is, they're going to
Yeah.
feel it. And then they're going to start participating.
Yeah,
So,
well, yeah, it has. I mean, that's going to be the interesting trigger point. And we've got the canaries in the coal mine, which is our family that's voted for Trump. When are they?
mhm,
There's going to be something that touches their lives. There has to be. They're not completely insulated from, a delay in Social Security payments. Families or friends that are getting laid off, if they lay off half the federal workforce, the increased price of whatever, they can only. There's got to be something that permeates that bubble, so
mhm,
that those of us who because we're who we are and we're tuned into this, see these ripples and tides coming, and have been, the felt like Chicken Little saying the fascist sky is falling. But now it is. I mean, you can't have, as we saw last week, have a giant of industry on the lawn of the White House selling cars. That's fascism. That's the coming together of private industry and the government into one unit. And the president of the United States saying it's illegal to protest that company. That is the whole thing right
yeah,
there happening.
right,
And you can deny it if you want to and go, yeah, but Biden's laptop was fascist. It
right.
wasn't, no, that's not what it means. So, yeah, I think it has to have an impact. I mean, the hard part is with boycotting is how, I was thinking about this because, Amazon is extremely convenient and there's some good shows
Yeah,
on Amazon Prime. I love my iPhone. I like Google to search, like how we cannot unplug completely because they're all standing there next to him. So you're right, targeting it and still making the point. What we can all do is not buy a Tesla. So that's really fun to
yeah.
watch.
That's too. And I'd like to go back to, there's always going to be a group of people who, I think MAGA right now is approximately 30% of the country. But
Yeah.
then you've got the voting population and then the entire population. So I do think part of the bigger population will wake up when they start
Mm,
feeling this. But you're never going to get a certain group. They're always
true.
that they, like the Hitler fans were always going to be with Hitler no matter what. So I think what's important to note here is when Joe Biden, and he's a perfect example, he was an old white man. And I
Mm,
think that was what made people comfortable because he
yeah.
was the, classic grandfatherly idea of an American president. And for all of the never Trumpers and the independents who are right leaning, they could vote for him. I think it was too uncomfortable for them to vote for Kamala. I always like to go back. I've said it on many podcasts and shows, but I used to take my car into these two mechanics, and they were, I live in Maryland, on the east coast of Maryland, and fortunately, Maryland is a blue state, but we've
Mm,
definitely got some red spots in these blue states. And so they were conservatives. I
yeah.
know that they did not like Trump. But when the 2020 election happened, I didn't ask them who they voted for. I'm going to go ahead and assume they did not vote for Trump. I don't know if they voted for Biden, but at least I think they felt comfortable with Biden. I can tell
Mm,
you absolutely 100% they did not vote for Kamala.
yeah.
Again, I don't know if they voted for Trump. I don't know if they forgot. But either way, she was a Black woman. And unfortunately, there is just this group of people, and it's a huge one. It's millions of them, and a lot of white men, but it's white women too. We've seen that's how they vote. They just don't trust women. And
Mm.
then put, then it's a woman of color. It doesn't matter that she's got this insanely impressive resume and, what she's done with her life and the way that she just spoke to Donald and the way that she carried herself. Everything about her is incredibly impressive.
Yep.
Yet it wasn't enough to convince the American people. And I mean, obviously, I think Greg Palast did a breakdown on all of the illegal activity and legal activity, specifically legal activity, like the legal voter suppression.
Mm.
And he came with receipts and he did it on a Substack and he broke down that if they didn't enforce the legislation that basically, got us to where we were in 2024, she would have won with 286 electoral counts. So,
Yeah.
and then you also have to take into, I mean, so I know she would have won,
Mm.
but again, when you're up against this machine, this electoral machine, when you're up against Russian disinformation, and who knows who else was participating in disinformation,
Yeah.
when you're up against all of that, plus you've got the MAGA machine and the right wing machine and all of it, you can't overcome if you're a woman or a woman of color. It's almost impossible to overcome that. And again, it's not because of the woman. It's because
Yeah.
of the system and it's because of the misogyny and the internalized patriarchy that, all of us experience every day. And so, I mean, I don't know how this is all going to go. I really don't. I used to say a couple of days ago, I used to say, well, if they go after our Social Security and they go after our Medicaid, this is an indication to me that they're not worried about the midterms. But then I saw,
Mm.
um, you know, something about Elon going after Social Security, and I thought, you know
Yep.
what? Um, he's, in my opinion, he's so out there. I mean, obviously Donald Trump is evil and he's a terrible man. And they're all into cruelty, but I think like Elon for me takes it next level.
Yeah.
He's like next level evil, and honestly, I don't even know if they're thinking in terms of consequences in elections. I don't know. I don't know. I know that they cheat illegally. I believe they cheated in 2020. They just weren't successful. I think it
Mm.
was too difficult because Joe Biden was just, it was everybody had Trump fatigue. There was
Yeah.
COVID going on, and here comes this man again, grandfatherly American presidential type. Everybody was just ready to sleep at night
Yeah.
comfortably, and so but we can't get that every time. But this particular election, if we have a free and fair election in 2028, I think we need to run a man who will, just like with Joe Biden promising, I'm going to get a black woman on the Supreme Court, I'm going
Yep.
to put a black woman as a vice president, make us those promises that you're going to do everything you can to fix the system so that it's more fair for anybody who wants to come in. Obviously, a black man can win, maybe not all
Mm.
of them, but Obama did it. But a
Yeah.
woman, I don't know. We're just
Well, I think that she was left. I think all those things, there's a lot of there that I agree with as well. I think that the other thing that meant that Kamala never had a chance is you cannot introduce yourself to the American people. Even if you're vice president of the United States, people still didn't have a sense of who she was because
yeah.
most people don't pay attention to politics. Understandably, they're living their lives and they forget how much politics affects everything, which I
Mhm.
think this Doge lesson is going to teach people once the
Yes,
Department of Education has been gutted and
right.
the disability support stops coming to high school kids and all of that. But at 3 months or whatever it was not enough for her to seep
So,
into the consciousness as a viable candidate. And I agree with you that there's a strong element of the misogyny that was there. Where you and I enjoyed her wiping the floor with Trump at the debate.
yeah,
I'm sure there's some men that were shocked and scared by that,
yeah,
even though it was glorious. And I don't think anybody's ever schooled him like she did. That's why he
I
was too
know,
scared to do it again. It was so
right.
beautiful.
It
I'm,
was.
I'm aware of time, and I don't want to keep you more than I promise, but I wanted to finish. I was going to ask. I often try and finish on a positive note, and to say, what are the things that are giving you hope? And I know you've got this new podcast, so I think that might be along that track because it's a very different kind of podcast. So, can you tell me about that? And if there's anything else that's making you feel good?
Yeah. So as far as my podcast is concerned, I just want to say I know your audience is liberal and political, so just please just give me this minute. I'm not pushing anything down anybody's throat. But for the last
You're not going
five
to
years,
sell gold to us either. So we're not selling gold on here. That's where you know a podcast is tipped because Piers Morgan now, he's a YouTube show. He's selling gold.
of
It's like,
course he is.
okay. And that's vitamins and supplements next. Anyway,
Exactly.
so
He
go ahead.
blocked me on Twitter, but whatever. So yeah, I've been studying intentional manifesting for 5 years.
Hmm.
I've kind of dabbled in it my whole life, but I never fully understood it. And so 5 years ago, I really started, practicing, delving, questioning, wondering, and it led me to near-death experiences, which
Hmm.
again, I was aware of them and I had heard them, but I think by this point now, I've probably listened to like 1,000 of them, and combined with what I've experienced in my own life, and like there's the whole more to life than meets the eye, and with what people who have near death experiences say about who we are, and like
Hmm.
my own personal experiences, I know that we manifest our lives through our thoughts, our choices, our belief system and what we assume to be
Hmm.
true. And so I like to talk about that on my podcast because I think that it's really the only thing that's been keeping me afloat. And if I have any positivity, it's because I am focused on, how can I say this? I control my inner dialogue and I
Hmm.
control my inner world, whereas it's not toxic positivity or anything like that. I'm aware of what's going on. As you can see, I've been talking about it, but I'm also not choosing to swim in the negative and
Yeah.
feed the fear, which is something that I've done my whole life. I've always assumed, oh, this isn't going to work for me. I can't have this thing. And it's
Hmm.
always based on nothing. It's always just, sometimes it's based on like I'll give the quick example. Like if somebody enters 5 contests and they don't win, usually the narrative is like, oh, well, I don't win contests. But
Hmm.
where's the universal law that Kimberly can't win contests? There is
Yeah.
no. So it's just, you could play the 6th time and win, or maybe you could play 25 and then you win the 26th time. There's just no law, but we take on these stories about ourselves, usually in a negative way, and it
Hmm.
affects how we deal with everything. So, and then there's the fun side of it where, when you start playing around with this, you can manifest things into your awareness and you can build faith on it, and it's fun.
Hmm.
And there, like for me, you do it with inconsequential things. So whether it's a cup of coffee, or like I manifested $250 once, like I had just put it out into the universe, I'm going to get my $250. And it was funny because it's a long story, but I actually had to put out my own $250 and get reimbursed. So I
Hmm.
thought, oh, I did get my $250. And I was like, okay, universe, let's do this over. Thank you for, the unexpected $250. And then 2 weeks later, randomly, my dad sent me a check for $250. And he never does that. So it's just kind of funny. And there's lots of stories like that. So there's like the playing around side of it, which is fun.
Hmm.
And then I think to me, there is the side of it that is almost like cognitive behavioral therapy, where you just when you're spinning out, if you're
Yeah.
starting to be fearful, you bring yourself down to a place of neutrality, and just kind of get yourself centered, and then put your focus on other things, put your focus on what you would rather do or you prefer doing, as opposed to what you're afraid of and what you don't want happening. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Hmm. Oh, that's
A
great.
big
So,
nutshell.
but I mean, it sounds like that's a focus on positive things, which is always a good thing, especially in times
Yeah.
where everybody, both here and in the UK, the stress is there. It's hard to turn on the news and not feel absolutely terrified. So
Yeah.
something that can, help reframe the way we're seeing
Yeah.
things, I think
Reframe
is a
and give
great
you a
way to do it.
personal control. We can't
Yes.
control everything, but we can't control things outside of us, but we can influence them, but
Mm.
we have 100% control of what we tell ourselves. So,
Yeah, sure. Oh, that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much again, Kimberly, for coming back on, and we're gonna see where this fun train. We're gonna
yes,
manifest a
so excited.
beautiful, wonderful world of.
But we can
of
collectively manifest if everybody just, puts their attention on what they would prefer and don't think against it. Don't get lost in the, but this is going to happen and this could, yes, of course it all could happen. But
Yeah.
let's just try to focus on what we would prefer. And if we did that collectively, I think, of course we have to follow it up with action and show up and vote and all that stuff. But I mean, put our intention out there, and then follow through with that intention.
That sounds like a very good plan. Thank you so
Okay.
much. So there we have it. That was Kimberly. Thank you so much to Kimberly for coming back on the podcast. Fascinating discussion, if dark at times, but really want to check out her podcast, The Seeker, to listen to something that is completely different and is kind of a cleanse and maybe a way to reframe and think about the world in a slightly different way. It's always nice to hear different perspectives. Definitely going to keep an eye out for Governor J.B. Pritzker is one to watch as maybe a future of the Democratic Party, as somebody who's taking the fight to the Trump team as we go forward in this battle and these dark days ahead. So really enjoyed catching up with Kimberly. Always fascinating. Make sure to check out Start Me Up, her political podcast, and of course, The Seeker, her non-political podcast. Thanks to her for coming on. Thanks to Mark, the producer, as always, for pulling everything together. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.